And we are live. I did one of these live shows last week, sort of impromptu thing, and I liked it. I thought it worked pretty well. So I figured that I'm gonna do one more. Since it is Memorial Day, there are a couple of things I want to cover. My original intention was to talk a little bit about buying a first gun. And I will. That's going to be the primary topic, but I want to mention a couple of things on Memorial Day. Generally, I don't do Memorial Day or Veterans Day videos too much. Honestly, I'm a first-generation immigrant. There are very few members of my family have served within my same generation. People have, and thankfully, none of them died while fighting for America as an American soldier. I obviously have quite a few family members who passed away, who fought in the same wars America did, in the same side as America did, notably World War II, but not as American soldiers. So I generally don't cover too much. There are plenty of people out there who are far more qualified than I am. I do, however, want to mention a couple of things, and it's spurred by our esteemed Vice President sending out a tweet before Memorial Day, enjoy the long weekend. And then, there was a bunch of backlash, and on Sunday she started backpedaling and saying some wise things about Memorial Day and all that sort of stuff. All this backpedaling stuff is utter bullshit. She is a professional politician, and there's nothing goes on Twitter that she does not think is a good idea. And one of the things to keep in mind, our esteemed politicians, they may be assholes, but they're not idiots. Well, there are some exceptions, but AOC is an idiot. But Kamala Harris is not. She is a committed leftist. And to her, Memorial Day is indeed just a barbecue day. More importantly, perhaps, is to the vast majority, likely, of her leftist supporters, Memorial Day is indeed just a barbecue day. There is this graphic. Doug's here. Hi, Doug. There is this graphic that pops up on Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and I'm going to put it up on the screen. And I think it needs to be updated. I'll be honest with you, and I'll explain why momentarily. It is a very meaningful graphic where it shows, basically soldiers, living and dead, propping up a happy family, and their sacrifice is what enables this happy family to enjoy life. If it was just this, I would have no problem with it. But in this modern world of ours, increasingly, the people that our military is propping up with their lives and their sacrifice are not just a happy family enjoying their life. I mean, that's us. We're a happy family enjoying our life, and we greatly appreciate the sacrifice. But increasingly, nearly half the country seem to be people who have no appreciation of that sacrifice. I think this cartoon, this picture, needs to be updated to show, on top of the grass, instead of the happy family enjoying the day by the water. I think increasingly it should be showing some Antifa or BLM people carrying a TV out of a marauded electronics store. I think that seems to be the symbol of the new leftist America. Anyhow, this sad thoughts aside, I'm going to move on to what I originally wanted to talk about. And that is, a couple of announcements, what I'm up to, and then I want to talk a little bit about buying your first gun. As far as announcements goes, I've mentioned it in the past, a week from yesterday, so next weekend, my son and I am going to head out to Alaska, do some black bear hunting and fishing, stuff like that. which is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to try to squeeze in a proper live cast this coming Thursday in the evening, the way I usually do. So if you guys have questions, if you're seeing this as a recorded video, there is something you want to ask me live, 7 p.m. Mountain Time on Thursday, I plan to do another one of these. I received something interesting not too long ago. So this is, I wonder why this picture is out of focus. This is a case for a new 8.6 blackout round. And this is a large monolithic copper bullet that's going to go in this. To see, I get a kick out of the fact that the bullet is longer than the case. So it's a 33 caliber, 338 caliber, or 8.6 millimeter if you're in Europe bullet. And it needs this big ass die to be able to sit a bullet that long in this case. For comparison, for supersonics, I'll be able to use perfectly normal. These are Hornady dies, a sizing and a sitting die. For the long monolithic subsonic bullets, and there will be a few of these in the market, this crazy ass looking die, sitting die, is what I will need to use. So that's going to be quite interesting for me. New adventure. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do anything with it before I go to Alaska. I don't even have a gun for this caliber yet. The caliber is created by a company called Q, who make my favorite bolt gun called the Fix, and I plan to build myself another Fix rifle, or maybe bolt action pistol in this caliber. I think the cartridge is optimized for 12-inch barrel, so it'll make an exemplary short barrel rifle or a bolt action pistol, and that's probably the configuration I am going to go for. The idea is to set it up so that with a suppressor and everything, it is reasonably compact and capable of hunting. There are a few interesting things about this cartridge. One of the more interesting ones is how fast the twist rate. I think the barrel is going to be 1 3 twist rate. What it does with subsonics, it greatly increases the lethality of subsonic bullets. Okay. Why? Well, if you spin the bullet faster, this rotational energy is still energy, right? So if you design the bullet the right way, you are dumping more energy into an animal, and this cartridge is first and foremost supposed to be a hunting cartridge. Just like the Fix, in many ways, is a general purpose bolt gun. That means hunting is somewhere at the top of the list. I'll keep you posted as I experiment with this cartridge. I plan to mess with it a little bit and get some loads going, stuff like that. Hopefully sometime toward the summer they'll get a few barrels, and I'll build myself a gun in this caliber, and later in the year you'll see me talking about it and posting about it, and I'll share my experiments. I plan to use, for subsonics, other than these custom monolithic bullets, I plan to use 300 grain Match Kings for precision stuff. I like to shoot far away with subsonics, but it should also be a rather capable supersonic cartridge with comparatively lightweight 33 caliber bullets. That's going to be something to experiment with. Drew is here. Hi, Drew. It's good to see you, sir. I'm glad you caught this one live. I started doing these live things occasionally, just in the spur of the moment. I have an hour, I figured I might as well. And yeah, all is well and healthy. I'm past the whole COVID stuff. I talked about it last time. A bit over a week ago, my wife's grandfather passed away, which in many ways makes Memorial Day even more poignant. I will show you another picture. He was a soldier in World War II, and that generation was really dying off at a remarkable rate. I on my website, darklordofoptics.com, I wrote a little bit of a piece called "The Generation Nearly Gone." If you haven't seen it yet, I would appreciate it if you do. But this is him in, I think this is when they were going back through Poland with a Nagant revolver at his belt and a Pepesha submachine gun that Russians used. He was a tank driver. He was wounded in the battle for Warsaw, and Here's a picture. Here's him carrying a wreath that was for the memorial of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The city you see in the background, that was Warsaw, completely destroyed by the war. Thank you, Drew. He was my grandfather-in-law. It's my wife's grandfather. He lived to be 98, and he went out on his own terms. So it is very sad for us. But you know what? He had a hell of a run. He was a tough old soldier, and what he's achieved despite going through Holocaust and losing his entire family and all that is quite remarkable. Okay. Those men of that era, some tough and hardcore men, and played a major role in building this world. Yes, they have, and our new age leftist thugs are doing a very respectable job of destroying it. So that's kind of interesting, right? I talked about this a little bit in the past, but as that generation of Holocaust survivors, I'm Jewish, is going away, the last few are dying now on their last legs. We have anti-Semitism again, and even in the United States, which I used to think would be a haven for the Jews, not so much. But time will tell which way it's going to go. Okay. All right. So what I really wanted to cover originally, I'll go away from politics for a little bit, well, not too much, is the topic of a first gun. I spent a good amount of time in California in the last couple of weeks, because of these family issues that I have just mentioned. And I ran into, once again, quite a good number of people I had not seen in a while, and some of them were first-time gun owners, and some were asking me what to get. And I thought it would be worthwhile to cover that a little bit. I think most people who are looking for their first gun right now, I sort of doing it wrong in some ways, and I thought it would be worth covering a little bit of detail. First, let's talk numbers a little bit. Since the whole coronavirus, Antifa, BLM circus started a year and a half ago, gun sales exploded. You can't buy a gun. In California, there's a 4-hour line just to get into the gun shop, and there's probably nothing in the gun store anyway. But a lot of guns have been purchased. Quite a few of them have been purchased by people who already have at least one gun. But I think about 40% were purchased by first-time gun owners. What that means is that we've got 40%, we've got probably somewhere between 10 and 12 million new gun owners out there. In terms of what they've been purchasing, so the vast majority of the guns purchased. Yeah, there you go. So Drew is Polish. So yeah, Poland was completely destroyed by the war. Anyhow, so vast majority of the new guns purchased were handguns. Next were shotguns, because somebody convinced somebody that the best defensive tool is a shotgun. I'm not quite convinced of that, but we'll talk about that momentarily. The ratio of handguns to shotguns is about 2-to-1, and then there is a comparatively small number of first-time guns purchased that are rifles. I think a lot of that is a little bit misguided, partly because most people who bought a gun for the first time will never practice with it. They think that just having a gun means you just point it in the right general direction, pull a trigger, and magic is going to happen. Magic might happen or might not happen. I would probably lean toward getting a little bit of practice done. And the choice of the first gun you get should be really, really strongly leaning toward what are you going to be able to practice with. A vast majority of people who bought the guns for the first time are people who live in very urban areas, right? That means that getting some practice done will require some effort. It's not like in a rural area where you walk out in your backyard many places and go do some shooting, right? I've never lived in a place where I could do that. I do that with air guns. And if you're actually going to practice an air gun, it's not a bad idea. But fundamentally, you have to find a way to practice. The best way to do this is to buy a gun, go take a class, and after that, practice some drills. And the best, most effective practice you can do is dry practice, because it doesn't cost you any ammo, the ammo that you can buy right now anyway, without overpaying for it tremendously. Okay. Yeah. So I'll bring up Drew's comments. I question the shotgun as a home defense as well. It's like using a bazooka to swat a fly in the house instead of a fly swatter. Yeah, I'll address this in a moment. There is this common myth out there that really needs to be put to rest. But anyhow, you have to get something that can be used for safe dry practice. Dry practice means you get to pull the trigger, but no shot happens. And here is why that is important, because it's for most people who live in an urban area, that's the only practice you can do frequently. Okay. Anything else will require some sort of an effort. If you live in LA, you might be stuck in traffic for 2 hours trying to get to the range, and then you have to use ammo. And then too many people bought stuff that's too powerful. So what's going to happen is that if all of your practice is live fire, and you're not getting any serious instruction, and your buddy who just convinced you to buy a fancy 1911 is as your first gun, is likely not the person who should be instructing you. If you do not have proper instruction, all that's going to happen is that you will develop a flinch and you won't be able to hit broadside of the barn from inside the barn. Now, there are exceptions to this, right? But I used to be this first-time gun owner a long time ago. And unfortunately, a lot of these things, my buddy and I started shooting about the same time. We learned a lot of those things the hard way, right? The first rifle I shot in any volume was an 8mm Mauser with a steel butt pad. I didn't know any better, no padding, nothing. We just went there with a T-shirt and fired. I developed a flinch. It took me some years to get rid of. Okay. What should be an appropriate first-time firearm? Okay, if you want to look for a handgun, you should be getting a handgun that has a 22 conversion kit available for it. It's basically that. In my case, I learned to shoot with a Glock. In retrospect, it was fortunate. Okay, all right, I've got a couple of comments. I'll get to this, guys, momentarily. Okay. Where was I? Yeah. Get something that has a 22 conversion kit, and make sure you have something that can be dry fired, used for dry practice efficiently. Buying a dedicated rimfire handgun is good if you go to the range a lot, but it is not the same trigger. So in retrospect, one of the smartest things I did when I bought my first handgun, it was a full-size Glock. Wanted to buy 9mm, but they had a lightly used 357 SIG. The model was Glock 31. 357 SIG ammo was fairly expensive, so quite quickly I purchased a conversion kit from a company called, I believe, Advantage Arms. And while I fired a lot of full power ammo, but 357 SIG was expensive and I was still a student, so I ended up shooting a lot of 22, which at the time you could easily buy in large quantities. I didn't do enough dry practice, but I did a lot of rimfire practice, and that really helped me develop basic trigger discipline, trigger control, and things like that. Whatever you get, you have to find the means to practice with no recoil. That means dry practice, rimfire conversion kit. There are excellent rimfire conversion kits for 1911. There are excellent ones for CZ. There are probably a few others here and there. But by and large, if you're new to this, you should be buying a striker-fired handgun, assuming you're going for a handgun, that has a 22 long rifle conversion kit available. And then you have to practice. And the practice is a part that most people will not do, but if you plan to get competent, that's pretty much your best path to success, I believe. I'm not going to get into discussion of sights. Okay. We mentioned Beretta. I'm about to slam Beretta, so. All right, we'll get to that momentarily. Okay. Why striker fired? What is striker fired? Various Glocks, CP 320. Double action only is fine too. The trigger is a little bit harder to deal with, but that's fine. There is a variety of different options out there. Nearly every manufacturer makes a striker fired handgun at this stage. Why striker fired? What happens is that if you are not going to practice enough, and vast majority of you are not going to practice enough, you want something with the simplest possible set of controls. Okay. Simple possible set of controls means no external safeties, decockers, none of that sort of stuff. All the modern guns are drop safe. If you just drop them, they don't fire. That mostly happens in the movies, unless you got some real piece of shit somewhere. And you will not practice enough to develop the muscle memory to operate the safeties, decockers, and all that sort of stuff. Buy a striker-fired pistol where every time you pull a trigger, it is the same exact pull. Do dry practice and make sure you get a 22 conversion kit. Now onto the shotguns. I have Drew's comment here that he questions the shotgun as a home defense as well. It's like using a bazooka to swat a fly in a house instead of a fly swatter. The basic problem with the shotgun is this whole mythology where some idiots claim that you don't have to aim it, that you just point it in the right direction, etc. Well, the shot does spread, but the typical home defensive uses inside a home, the spread of the shot is about this big, roughly, something like that, less than a fist. You have to aim this thing. Okay, great. You said, all right, I'm going to aim with this. I'm going to practice with it. Well, you can do dry practice with it if you're diligent, right? But this bloody thing kicks. When you go to the range, the first thing that's going to happen is that your most common shotguns are 12-gauge shotguns. Even with mild recoiling rounds, if you're new at this, you're going to go and start practicing. The first thing that's going to happen is that you will develop a flinch. Okay? On top of that, depending on what you're looking for, most of the inexpensive shotguns you're going to find are not going to have sights on them. They're going to have a simple front bead or something like that, and developing the skill to use a gun like that without proper sights becomes a little bit tricky, right? And if you find something with ghost ring sights or proper rifle sights, and you go shoot it, once again, now we're here again developing a flinch. If you know what you're doing, a shotgun is a wonderful tool. But from a standpoint of defensive use, a shotgun basically is a very, very powerful rifle. It is spectacularly effective, although if you load it with something wrong, it will go through a lot of walls and may take out your neighbors, stuff like that. Okay. And we still come back to the fundamental problem that you will not practice enough. And if you practice too much with live ammo, you will just screw this up. If you're looking for a long gun, for defensive use, shotgun is very effective. But going through a house with something long is tricky. You need to practice. And you need to do dry practice. And once you want to practice with live ammo, basically you just need a 22 rifle. Not for defensive use, but for practice. We always run back into this issue of how do you develop the expertise without screwing yourself up. Whatever is your weapon of choice, you go get some instruction, you do some dry practice, right? And you try to do live practice without recoil. How do you get live practice without recoil or with minimal recoil with a long gun? That's not shotgun for you. What is it? It's an AR-15. Because 223 barely has any kick. My 7-year-old kid can shoot 223 or 300 blackout, something like that, without skipping a beat. Okay. So if you are planning to go to the range and practice, And if you're only buying one gun, it should be an AR-15. It should not be a shotgun. With an appropriate round, the AR-15 will still go through a lot of walls and all sort of stuff, but it will kick less. It's ergonomic, it's handy, and the chance of you screwing yourself over with improper practice is much less, because this thing, well, it's loud, but it does not kick you as much. Okay. Drew has another good comment. Yeah. With a shotgun, developing the right expertise to use it effectively will take some time and effort. And at close-up ranges, basically defensive ranges, in terms of lethality, you're not going to find that much difference between a shotgun, right, and a any decent rifle. Yeah, shotgun is a powerful rifle for defensive users. It will take down an attacker probably with more authority. But honestly, an AR-15 at close distance will really, really do the job well. And because it does not have that much recoil and you are more likely to actually practice with it, your ability to put the bullet where it's supposed to go is going to be much, much better than it will be with a more powerful rifle or with a shotgun. Okay, so I have a few questions. I'm going to go and address them. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is, if you're a first-time gun owner, shotgun is not a great idea, no matter what your buddy who watches too many Hollywood movies tells you, right? A tricked-out 1911 with an extra safety and a ultralight, super crisp triggers is not a great idea, no matter what the internet tells you. Striker-fired handgun, 22 conversion kit. You want a long gun, buy an AR-15 from a decent one from Bravo Company, or if you're on a budget, buy something from Palmetto. That stuff has really impressed me with how good it is. For the money, I'll put some links below a video, what I think is a good starter AR-15. Buy one of those. Get a 22 conversion kit for it if you want to do volume practice, live fire. But whatever you get, minimal recoil. For handguns, that basically means 9mm, right? In a fairly lightweight handgun, anything else, you'll just flinch more and it's not going to make you more effective. For rifles, it basically means AR-15 and 2 to 3 or 300 blackout. 2 to 3 is going to be cheaper, and a conversion kit. Okay, that's essentially what you're stuck with. In the modern market, we have this crazy variety. But if you're new at this, there aren't too many other options that approach this in quality. Now, exception to this. If you're buying a gun because you want to start hunting, different ballgame. Okay, then you need 2 rifles. You need a 22 rifle, and you need a big game rifle in a caliber of your choice. 6.5 Creedmoor, 308, basically need medium type cartridge. Okay, but the volume shooting you're gonna do is gonna be with the 22, and the volume dry practice you do is gonna be with the actual centerfire gun, because they can be dry fired safely. If hunting is not near the top of your list, striker-fired handgun, conversion kit, AR-15, conversion kit. Spend the rest of your money on practice and ammo. That's pretty much it. All right, let's look at some comments. Let's see. Yeah, so Drew made a comment about a shotgun. I think I've addressed that adequately. Drew, as much as it pains me to say, I'm actually considering buying a Mantis X for dry training at home due to ammo shortage. I actually have a Mantis X somewhere. I did a little article on it a while back on the first gen, and I liked it a lot. I don't use it as much as I used to, simply because I shoot air guns a lot, and I moved out of LA, and I'm at the range 3 times a week and all that. So Mantis is extremely useful, but I do a little bit different type of practice. Some sort of a tool like that is extremely helpful. Probably if you're able to shoot air guns, BB guns, that is green gas guns that also simulate a little bit of recoil. Barring that, I think Mantis is an excellent option. Okay. Can you give us a brief review of the Delta rangefinder binoculars, especially its optical quality? Is it a good buy for the price, around $1,000? It is quite good optically. I'm going to do a video talking about that Vortex Fury 5000, and I talked to Meopta. They are going to send me a Optica LR range finding binocular, which I think is in the $1,500 range, like the Vortex Fury. And I'm going to do an article on all three. From what I've seen so far, Delta looks to be a good buy, and I really like the 9x45 configuration. It doesn't quite have the same electronic wizardry in terms of communicating with phones and all that as the Fury 5000 has. And for me, that makes a difference, partly because, it talks to my watch, talks to my phone, and I do longer range things a lot. But if you are just looking for a simple rangefinder that will range accurately, have good enough optical quality, and also tell you the range and the angle, Delta 9x45 seems to be a really, really good option. I'll spend more time with it. I'll release proper videos, but from my time with it so far, and I've spent a good amount of time with it, I really like it. Okay. A lot of people like that Mantis X. Yeah, I said I was an early adopter. It works really well. Mr. Prone Wolf, good to see you here. Totally agree with the 22 of some kind. Yeah, if you can find ammo, absolutely. But if you plan to do any sort of a significant amount of live fire practice, it's got to be with the 22 or something that minimizes recoil and muzzle blast and things like that. Okay. M922 is very similar to the real thing. I highly recommend it. So the 22 version of the Beretta I highly recommend, but the actual Beretta 92 FS is all the way at the bottom of the list of the guns I would recommend to a new shooter. If you know what you're doing, you can figure it out. For people new to this, and Lord knows I've taught a good number of people to shoot, and I've seen a lot more at different shooting classes. Beretta 92 FS, basic civilian version of Beretta M9, is just a bad idea. This whole business with this slide-mounted safety decocker thing, everybody screws this up while trying to manipulate the gun, right? Beretta has this weird-ass slide that's cut out in the front. When you're trying to manipulate the gun, you grab it in the bag, and you frequently engage the lever in some sort of a screwed up way, and then you're ready to shoot and nothing good happens because you've engaged the safety or something like that. I know a ton of people who bought a Beretta 92 as their first gun. If you bought it to feel good about yourself, you're never going to shoot it. It's a great purchase. Looks awesome. If this is your one gun and you don't practice a whole lot, this is not a good choice. The 22 version is fine, but the real thing, I probably wouldn't go after that. Okay. The 22s are made by Umarex in Germany, one of the best service style 22s I have ever played with. Yeah, Umarex makes nice stuff, and that particular one is really nice, and I like it far more than the actual Beretta 92. Jared, published tracking test on Sniper's Hide showed only perfect scores for very few scopes. Bushnell, Collis, and Tangent were always correct in tracking. Yeah, so I looked at those tests briefly. It's very useful information. It's a good way of saying this. Statistically, there's not enough data there to make too many conclusions. In practical terms, if your gun tracks consistently, that's all that matters, because if your scope tracks consistently. If, let's say, your scope tracks 99%, not 100%, but does that every time, when you develop your dope, all your data, etc., it will take that into account. Now, transition from scope to scope and each one tracking slightly differently may screw things up a little bit. But, if you develop your dope data at different altitudes and all that, you can easily have more difference than 1%. The typical OEM scopes seldom guarantee tracking to better than 2%. 2%, occasionally 1%, 2% accuracy for the turrets is pretty much as good as you're going to get most OEMs to do. So if you were to take a large number of OEM scopes and check their tracking, statistically you would find roughly 2% error aggregate of them, right? For extreme cases, right? The most of them will be more within range. For the really high end, essentially hand-built scopes that are not OEM, that are built in-house, like the tangents and the Colossus and a few others here and there, chances are each scope actually gets tested for tracking after being assembled. For a lot of OEM scopes, they don't. Many OEM scopes that are QC'd by the customer, I mean, let's say Vortex takes in a bunch of Razor rifle scopes. What Vortex does, they add turrets for the Razor Gen 2 in-house, and then they look at tracking. So you will generally find scopes like the Razor Gen 2 being very, very consistent. Not because the OEM built them to be quite so consistent, but partly because Vortex has looked at them as they came in, and if something was off, it was rebuilt, sent away, or whatever, right? Only the good stuff makes it through. Okay. Yeah. So I don't get too hung up about tracking accuracy within reason. It has to be very close. What I really, really care about is that the turrets have to agree with the reticle well enough within some margin of error, and that the turret adjustment is consistent. If it's 98% today, right, or 102%, meaning there is another direction tomorrow, now that is a problem, right? But if the scope turrets track consistently and you train with that scope and you develop your recorded data using that scope based on actual targets at actual shooting distances and stuff, it doesn't matter that much. Okay. Correct. There were many significant deviations by Leupold, SIG, and Vortex. With Vortex, so the Razors generally track, PST Gen 2 generally tracks. PST Gen 1 had some issues. Strike Eagle I've been generally good with, and I've seen a good number of these. So we'll see. But higher-end Vortexes, high-end scopes generally track about the same. Okay. Let's see. What else we got? Prone Wolf. I'm interested in March this year for some reason, even though my wallet is not. Your wallet and my wallet must be talking. I'm interested in a lot of stuff that my wallet is not excited about. But, what can I tell you? If you really want one, you'll open up your wallet, my friend. Drew. It took me years to ditch the flinch and eye closing at trigger pull. Good ear protection plays a role in helping with flinching too. Yes, that is very true. And one of the things I forgot to mention, flinch is a function of recoil and the muzzle blast. One of the stupidest things I see people do is they take mild recoiling guns like AR-15s and they put a brake on them. And those brakes can get freaking loud. The worst, I think I once saw some short barrel 56. Somebody put this crazy brake on. That thing was so ridiculously loud. I'm generally more sensitive to sound than I am to actual recoil, partly because I am a big guy and I've been shooting for a while. But sound makes a difference. There are two parts to controlling sound. One is good hearing protection. Good hearing protection is not as simple as you would think, because what happens is that all the different public ranges, etc., they mandate hearing protection and eye protection, right? Which is the right thing to do. I've had a gun blow up in my hands a couple of times. I always wear shooting goggles. If I didn't, I wouldn't have eyes now. The moment you put your hearing protection over the ear hearing protection over the goggles, the rear, whatever they're called, of the goggles, you've broken the seal, and your 30 dB hearing protection is no longer 30 dB unless you have really nice high-quality silicone ear cups. So what you should be doing, especially if you're new at this, in general, everybody should be doing this, you should be taking those little in earpieces, like acoustic ones or something, and putting the larger over-the-ear ones on top of that. If you have the chance to do so, double up, use electronic hearing protection on the outside, the over-the-ear ones. It's not a bad idea, so you can amplify normal speech and some sort of acoustic ones in ear. The combination of the two works really well. On the gun side, what I did, I've built a lot of AR-15s for different friends and stuff like that, and not for friends, for my relatives and for my wife, etc. And what I do on AR-15s as a muzzle device, and if you're not planning to put a suppressor on, because that's a different ballgame, as a muzzle device, what I do predominantly is I put on a linear compensator. And what the linear comp does, it makes recoil maybe slightly softer, but with 2 to 3, nobody cares really. I'm not preparing competition shooters here. But what it does, it pushes the sound forward. So at an outdoor range, the sound signature to the shooter is a lot less prominent, a lot less invasive, a lot less abrupt. Okay. Good hearing protection combined with the linear comp will do wonders to you developing proper technique and not flinch. Mega good. Joe Biden told us to buy a shotgun, not an AR-15. Surely he was correct. Yes. So if I say what I think about Joe Biden's advice, this video will definitely get demonetized. Most of my stuff is now getting demonetized. So like for all people like me, time is coming. They'll demonetize us and kick us off soon enough. Already what happens is that when they limit ads or demonetize your video, it also doesn't show up in any searches. So if you guys want to see my stuff, I suggest you go to my darklordofoptics.com website. Before too long, that's probably going to be my only venue to get these videos out. Is there PPU and crutch? Is there a major difference between the clarity of Vortex Viper HD 20-60 by 85 and similarly sized Razor spotting scope? Or is it hard to tell the difference? Oh, no, it's not that hard to tell the difference. Honestly, Razor is a better scope. Figure out how much you want to spend. In their respective price ranges, Viper and Razor spotters, both quite good. But is Razor clearly better than the Viper? Yes. Is it worth the price difference? Depends. It's your money, right? If you get the Razor and that means you've just wasted all your money and you can't afford to go shooting, buy the Viper, right? If you can stand the price difference, get the Razor. It's a better spotter. I'm glad to say this weekend at 744 yards, I got a 7-inch group with my 12.5-inch 6.5 Grandel. It's pretty good. That's good shooting. Very nice. People don't appreciate. Most of us shoot plates at longer distances, and we don't pay attention to groups. If you measure the groups you are getting at 700, 800, 900 yards, a lot of you would be surprised of how loose they are. I got rid of my Bushnell Elite Tactical 15-45 spotting scope. Yeah, that's not my favorite design. MTF charts available for comparison of various optics. It's available for many lenses in the photography world. For rifle scopes, they're generally not available. And measuring it correctly for rifle scope is actually a little bit more involved than with a typical lens. A rifle scope is what's called an afocal telescope. There is plenty of specialized equipment that measures MTF of these things. We make it, among other things. But there are two problems with MTF charts. One is that it's a little bit more involved to measure it correctly for an afocal optic. Second problem is that training people on how to read an MTF chart correctly is more than a little bit involved. So I am always dubious about talking about MTF too much. And partly because there are many important things about rifle scopes that MTF does not take into consideration. And those things are not relevant to photographic lenses, but they are relevant to afocal systems because fundamentally there is a human eye behind it. MTF does not tell you everything about rifle scope. Doesn't tell you everything about the lens either, but tells you even less about rifle scope. Now, it is a very important metric, but you won't see it around too much. Pipper and Crutch. My difficulty is spotting for friends at the long range. The eye box and the Bushnell spotting scope sucks. I think the angled eyepieces are better. So the angled versus straight eyepiece is kind of an interesting question. It depends on your terrain. At the range, yeah, angled is going to be easier. In the field, I all too often actually prefer a straight eyepiece when possible, because if I need to find something in the spotter with a straight eyepiece spotter, it's actually easy to point at something, kind of be in the right direction. Another thing is that up in the mountains, if you need to look down off of a mountain, it's much easier with a straight eyepiece. So it kind of depends what you like, what you're looking to do, and what terrain you're working with. Drew, I got one of the drop-in 22 conversion kits. CMMG, but I forget which brand. I was shocked at how well it worked and how accurate it is. Just a lot of carbon buildup. Yeah, I mean, they work pretty well. I have to confess, I actually don't have one right now. I had one, I gave it to somebody. I was thinking about getting either another 22 conversion unit or just getting a dedicated 22 AR-15, like a Smith & Wesson or something like that, so that my kids could shoot and stuff like that. But they work really well. I will only use the drop-in 22 in a designated AR upper only to not wreck my primary uppers with carbon and lead flowback. Yeah, it sounds perfectly reasonable. But for carbon and lead blowback to be significant, you have to shoot a lot, right? Most new gun owners we've picked up in the last year and a half, not going to shoot that much. My buddy uses a CMMG conversion kit frequently. He doesn't seem to have any issues or complaints other than it's dirty. Yeah, your buddy is generally right, but it depends. A lot depends on the volume of fire, right? If you shoot enough, everything is going to get screwed up. And there are legitimate complaints about rimfire being dirty and lead going all over the place and all that. But are they a big deal for most normal people? No, not too much. If you're diligent about cleaning stuff, it's not really a big deal. But if you have 7 ARs, just Drew is right. If you have 7 ARs, just dedicate one for it. If you only have one, you use what you got. But he shot at upper at 600 yards with a conversion kit. That's impressive. So, more discussion for drop-in units. I agree, those drop-in units are a lot of fun. A box of 522s and a few hours of fun for like $12. Yeah, it used to be $12, not anymore. Let's see. Used to be $12. I bought every brick I could find at 18. Now the same bricks are 68. Yeah, I'm good with rimfire ammo for 300-400 years at the rate at which I shoot. But once the price is, I'm telling you guys, so I'm waiting. Ammo is beginning to show up. All of a sudden, I see advertising and people say it's on sale now instead of $70 for a brick. It's now $60. It looks like ammo prices are slowly coming down. When it's back to normal levels for the common calibers I have, I swear I'm going to go and buy a pallet of 9mm, pallet of 223, and a pallet of 22. Not that I, strictly speaking, need it right now. I'm okay. But I've seen more than one of these shortages already. I'll talk to a couple of my friends and we'll pitch in and buy some serious bulk when the opportunity presents itself. Tris, in the tactical PRS style scope, what's the leader in your opinion, regardless of price? Regardless of price, tangent theta. 5-25 with Gen 3 XR radical. Z comp is really close. On balance, I slightly prefer the tangent theta. But in the top end, I'd be looking at tangent and Z comp slightly ahead of the competition, I think. Drew, do you know of any brand of spotting scope and laser rangefinders that have the H591 reticle in them? I have seen the H59, but not the H591. I realize I'm reaching or being picky when that close. No, I'm not aware of any. I thought H591 was the version that Burris used for a while, maybe I'm wrong. So I have very little use for anything Horus. I think it's just a demonstrably bad idea. Although the small one they had in the LMSS Bushnell spotter was okay. Aside from that, I've never seen a Horus reticle that I thought was worth using. So this is kind of outside my wheelhouse. What is your opinion of primary arms GLX to X Prism? YouTuber Garantham calls it the end of the world red dot. Are you planning a video review? I am planning a video review. I like this prismatic quite a lot. I am actually going to take it to Alaska with me to go shoot a black bear. Distances are not very long, and 2x prismatic should be just right. End of the world red dot is sort of an odd thing, and to be fair, Garantham is a good dude and a really good shooter, but he says stupid things about optics all the time. But in this case, I agree with him. I think it's an excellent sight, and a little bit of magnification goes a long way. So if you need to identify your target, don't just shoot it quickly. A low power prismatic has a lot to recommend itself, and the 2-power primary arms is one of the better currently available options. I think lead buildup is a myth. I shot 5,000 rounds straight in the Beretta. No cleaning. Well, look, keep shooting. When it blows up on you, you will no longer think it's a myth. What can I tell you? It's not a myth, but it takes a lot of time and effort to develop enough lead buildup for it to be an issue. And also, it varies from barrel to barrel. Is the Viper HD better over the Bushnell or equal? I assume we're still talking about spotters. The Elite Tactical that you had, Viper is pretty close, I think. A Razor is better. Oh, I see. So earlier there was a comment about shooting an AR-15 upper at 600, and I thought it was 22, which is impressive. He shot the same upper at 600 with 223. And it's the same upper that he runs the conversion unit on, and he shoots it frequently. Yeah, if you maintain reasonable cleaning, running a conversion kit for through your regular 223 upper is not going to degrade accuracy. You just kind of have to pay attention. Don't recall. Have you reviewed the GPO German Precision Optics? I did a review of their GPO TAC 128x24 a while back. It will be on my opticsthoughts.com website. It would be not a video, it would be a written article. I have not reviewed anything else. I'm friendly with one of the guys there. He hooked me up with their public relations person in the US. She replied to a couple of my emails and then stopped talking to me. So when I have a little more time, I'll reach out one more time and then assume they don't want to deal with me and ignore them. Seemed like a good company. I don't like their marketing department. That was the company that, what was it? I think it was a European bridge. I could be wrong. They introduced a fixed power scope and decided to say something so blindingly stupid that I decided to make it my test case for taking apart stupid marketing. Perhaps that pissed them off. Don't care. They have a couple of interesting things coming up. Most of their stuff is built in Asia, different places with electronics added in Germany, and some QC happening in Germany. Originally, most of the higher-end passion stuff were Japanese-made, with electronics added in Germany. The new scopes, the Spectra lineup, those are Chinese scopes, once again with electronic modules added in Germany. But they are supposedly higher-end Chinese scopes. They QC them in Germany, I think, so it should be interesting to see. They have one model I was really interested in, the 1.5 to 9x32. So if I'm able to get my hands on one, that would be a review I'm interested in. Most of their stuff is hunting-related things. So I do a good amount of stuff on hunting, but more tactical and precision. So perhaps that's another reason why they have zero interest in working with me. I understand. Thank you on the H591 answer. Yeah, the only H591 I remember was in Burris XTR2, I think, scope. And it was kind of a variant of the H59. So, any word on when we can see your thoughts on the March 1.5 to 15? I saw the prototype. I said I sent off to a friend of mine. But from I'll get my hands on later in the year. I'll get my hands on the production scope. The 4.5 to 28x52 is gonna go into my list of recommendations. I really like this scope. The FML TR1 reticle that I designed in many ways was designed with that scope in mind, and I think the combination works really well. This scope I like a lot. It's a little bit more forgiving to use and get behind than traditional March scopes, even the new 5 to 42. So I think March will do really well with this one, given how compact it is. It may be the best, or one of the best short, compact precision scopes out there. Like I said, I think the real competition for it is the ZComp 4 to 20. I want to test the Schmidt 5 to 20x50 ultra short. I kind of like short compact scopes, so that would be interesting to see side by side. But I think March will do really, really well with this design. Okay. All right. I think I managed to blow through all the questions. And we are at 57 minutes. Oh, there we go. How would you say it does in low light? I'm in Alaska, and I shoot in the winter a lot, and sunshine is at a premium. Seems to work well in low light as well as other high-end scopes. I mean, where in Alaska are you? I'm flying to Anchorage in a week. Going to go do a black bear hunt with my son, and do a lot of fishing probably. But it seems to work well. So I looked at it in low light next to a bunch of other stuff, and it's about as well as most other high-end scopes. I think Tangent and Leica may have a very slight edge in terms of color retention in low light, but the 4.5 to 28 March seems to be quite good. Now, if low light is a huge deal, large objective lens is your friend, right? The March is a 52 millimeter, but if you need a compact scope, that's actually quite good. But larger 56 millimeter scopes will likely do better. Okay. Yes, you're correct, Nibur 6TR2. I was hoping to standardize all the optics. The H59 will have to do on the spotting scope and laser rangefinder. There you go. As much as I dislike Horus, if it works for you, standardize and try to keep things as similar as you can. Has any company you have Heard of, been working on a higher power flip to side magnifier. A prismatic or red dot with a 6 to 10 power magnifier seems like it could work well and be fast. So prismatics generally don't work with magnifiers. PA is supposed to have one that should work with magnifier. Generally, you use a magnifier behind the red dot, not behind the prismatic. I have not heard of 10 power magnifiers. Maybe some exist, but not from the high quality manufacturers. With 6 power magnifiers, I have the aim point and use it and like it quite a lot. You can put it in a flip to side mount and it works nicely. One of the problems with magnifiers, or really prismatic scopes, once you go to high magnification, if you're trying to maintain a good field of view, the prism gets large and the whole thing gets big, heavy, and bulky. So as you go to high magnifications, you get into a little bit of a case of diminishing returns in many ways. I haven't seen any high quality magnifiers above 6 power, and with 6, I think aim point is the best that's currently available. Okay, are there any LPVOs you are eyeing that are going to replace your Delta Strike 1 to 6 recommendation this year? You think sub 1K? Anything upcoming that you think might? Oof. Good question. I'm not aware of anything of that ilk. There is some stuff coming. Some front focal plane Chinese manufactured, good quality, seemingly low power variables coming. It's a little bit different than the Striker. And if they're good, they will do something slightly different. But if you need the second focal plane ultra bright dot low power variable, second focal plane, I think from the time being Striker is your Huckleberry. By the time we get to next SHOT Show, there may be a couple of things, but until right now everybody's so backlogged. Until they really get here, who the hell knows? I think I'm going to get the Viper HD because I still have a file receiver to get other items. Just don't want to have to sell and buy another spotting scope again. So I think you talked about the 85mm spotters. Viper is quite good there. Cole Scott at Liberty Optics, tell him I sent you. With 65mm spotters in the $600-700 range, I'm really, really impressed with Athlon Ares UHD. Really impressed. It's not the lightest, but as far as 65mm spotters go, I really like it. It works really well. Prone Wolf, I work in Anchorage, but I might be working out of town next week. Yeah, my schedule in Alaska is going to be tricky. We've got a few different things planned, so I'll be, I have a friend who lives there, and we'll be mostly. I've never been to Alaska, so I'm going to do some sightseeing, do some fishing, some hunting. Should be a blast, and my son turns 8 next month, so hopefully it's going to be a memorable trip for him. Drew, I personally do not have the expertise in scope technologies. As much as I really like the Burris XTR2, it has a brown hue in the glass. Good for high sunny day, bad at nighttime. So if your XTR2 has a brown hue, it is an early model. Does it still have 8 milliradian per turn turrets or 10 milliradian? And I'm not sure which XTR2 it is, but the 4-20 has gone through some changes. And if you're not happy with the glass, send it to Burris. If they swap it out for a later one, it's a good bit better. But you're right. So mechanically, XTR2 is super robust. Optically, the 4-20 model is actually quite decent, but there are better scopes out there now, optically. Andrew Brother Nice, I was waiting for Burst to come out with an illuminated reticle because in the winter I use spotlights on the target, and the reticle illumination really helps. I think you're talking about the XTR3. I'm also waiting for reticle illumination before I review that scope. Optomechanically, the XTR3 looked very very, very good to me. but the reticle is thin and I wanted to eliminate it. So I didn't. The reason you have not seen a review from me yet is that I really want to see elimination. Okay. If you're ever in Riverside, I have access to a small range. Keep up the good work. Appreciate it. Thank you. I lived in California for 28 years. I moved to New Mexico a couple of years ago. So range access has not been an issue since I moved here, but I really do appreciate the offer. JB, you will like Alaska, try and see a glacier. That's on the list, but Alaska weather in the summer can get interesting depending on what the weather allows us to do. I didn't make too many specific plans. I don't schedule my time minute by minute. There are a couple of things I really want to do, and the rest of it will just play it by ear. XTR2 has illumination. It has exceptional weakened brightness, but I still like it a lot. Yes, XTR2 is illuminated, and it's weak in brightness for a reason. They actually calibrated it really, really well for low light use. But XTR3, the scope they build in the US, XTR2 is Philippines, XTR3 is an American-made scope. That one does not yet have an illuminated model, but it's coming. Alrighty, guys, we're past an hour, and I was gonna go give my kids a lecture on what Memorial Day means. So I'm gonna wrap this up in a couple of minutes. If there's anything else you want me to address, now's the time. And if not, as Mr. Prone Wolf has so eloquently put, good chatting with you, gentlemen. It is indeed good. Keep the good questions coming. Once again, I'm going to plug my website because I have a strong suspicion that this whole YouTube, Facebook thing has an obvious expiration date on it. darklordofoptics.locals.com or just darklordofoptics.com forwards to that website. And thank you, Drew. Thank you for the good questions. That's the part that I enjoy. The reason I do this live stuff is that I like the interaction. If you have access to the light, I have found using a green LED light on a self-defense light blinds the intruder well, but avoids optics washout. Yes, lights for defensive use is a separate ball game altogether. And depending on what kind of red dot you have, if your red dot happens to have a green dot, I would not use a green LED. But if you have a red dot with a red illuminated dot and you use a green light, that actually works quite nicely. Good. All right, people, thank you for the questions. And mark your calendar. I'm going to do a proper live cast on Thursday night. I am deliberating. I'm picking between 2 or 3 different topics. If there's something specific you want to address, hit up my website, put it in the comments somewhere, start new thread. Otherwise, I hope to see you Thursday. You have a good evening and what's left of the Memorial Day weekend.